All right, so we did our neurographic art. We made some lines, and maybe you added a couple lines to fill in, and then you started rounding out the corners. Rounding out the corners. And in each spot, I want you to practice some of these different techniques with your paint. You've got your watercolor set, a container of water. So the first thing is wet on dry. The paper's dry, the paint is wet. You gotta put a little drop of paint into your section, and I'm just gonna pick an area and do something. I'm making a pattern. You guys have been Zentangling, so you know all about pattern. I need a little more paint, and I'm just gonna keep going here until I fill up this whole section. That's wet on dry, so I see crisp edges around the paint because the paper is dry there. Next one is wet on wet. I'm gonna get my section wet first. And actually, I'm gonna switch over to my number 10 brush. This is gonna hold the most water. So when you're painting a big area, you usually use a big brush. When you're doing a smaller area, and when I touch a little bit of paint to the wet paper, you get like this tie-dye effect. It's really fun to do. You can mix the colors if you want to, but then again, like, you can kind of control the paint because it doesn't go outside of that section where the water is. I missed this corner. There was no water there. All right, so a little drop there. All right, next one is marker. I am gonna grab Crayola marker. If I color in a section with Crayola marker, and then I paint over it, just with water, what's gonna happen, guys? It's gonna spread and bleed and almost like turn to paint, right? Let's see if this one will show it better. That didn't show up. It's happening, but this marker, this light green marker, was a little bit dried out, so it didn't work as well as I had hoped. All right, this one, now you can see it, right? Because down here I have green, almost like a green paint. All right, so that's good to know. What about Sharpie? What if I use Sharpie in a section and then I paint over it? What would happen?
Nothing.
Nothing. Right, so that's also good to know, because say you have a Zentangle pattern in a section, and I'm not going to take up your time to Zentangle this whole darn thing, and then you want to paint over it, it's good to know that that's going to stay put and you're still going to be able to see whatever the pattern is. You can also use Sharpie over the top of a painted section. Okay? All right. Next one, a flat wash. This is a great technique for skies. All right, so take a puddle of water. I'm using my biggest brush. I'm gonna put a little puddle of paint, basically. And a flat wash is an area that I'm gonna try to have an even kind of coverage of color for this whole section, like that. A graded wash, on the other hand, I'll do this section down here. I'm gonna, again, put a puddle of water, add a little paint, and then I'm gonna paint my section. But when I'm about halfway through, I'm gonna rinse my brush in the water and then continue so that it gets lighter and lighter as it goes down. And then I'm gonna go back at the top and do almost like a wet on wet so that I have, and then blend if I need to, so that I have something that goes from dark to light. Okay? This kind of dripped down there. Okay. All right, last one I want you guys to try is crayon. And underneath your wash, you're gonna take a piece of crayon. Can you pass me one from that table in those clear plastic cups, please? And if you use a white crayon, thank you. If you use a white crayon, and you can Zentangle it or whatever, it'll appear. If you make a pattern, you can experiment with that too. And then again, I'm going to take a wash and I'm going to paint over that. And it's called a wax resist. The crayon resists being covered because it's oil based. And those are some basic painting techniques. Thank you.